What if the world we know ended in 1962? What if the tense standoff between two superpowers, the United States, the Soviet Union, did not end with a peaceful sigh of relief? Imagine a different October, one where cool heads did not prevail. Picture a world where the trembling fingers of leaders, pushed to their absolute limit, finally pressed the button. This is not a story from a science fiction movie. It is a possibility that came terrifyingly close to becoming our reality. We will explore this shadow history, a world plunged into darkness by the Cuban Missile Crisis. It is a journey into a past that, thankfully, never was. This alternate timeline begins with a single, fateful decision. A moment of miscalculation, a word spoken in anger that could not be taken back. In our history, diplomacy won. But what if it had failed? Welcome to IfVerse, where imagination meets reality. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your own what-if idea below. To understand the disaster that almost was, we must first look at what actually happened. In October 1962, the world stood still for 13 days. An American spy plane took shocking photographs over Cuba. The photos showed the Soviets building launch sites for nuclear missiles. Those missiles were just 90 miles from Florida. They could reach major American cities like Washington, D.C., New York. The discovery stunned President John F. Kennedy and his advisors. Kennedy immediately assembled his most trusted advisors. The group was called the Executive Committee of the National Security Council, or ExComm. They met in secret, day and night, debating what to do. The options were all dangerous. Some leaders pushed for an immediate airstrike. Others urged a full-scale invasion of Cuba. Both options risked war with the Soviet Union. Kennedy knew a wrong move could trigger a nuclear exchange, destroying both nations and possibly the entire world. Instead, Kennedy chose a cautious path. On October 22nd, he announced a naval quarantine around Cuba. It was essentially a blockade, meant to stop Soviet ships from delivering military supplies. He went on television to inform the American public and the world about the crisis. He warned the US would not tolerate missiles in Cuba. The world watched, terrified, as Soviet ships steamed toward the blockade line. Tension peaked on October 27th, a day called Black Saturday. A U-2 spy plane was shot down over Cuba. The pilot was killed. At the same time, a Soviet submarine near the blockade was hit with depth charges. Unknown to the Americans, the submarine commander was authorized to fire a nuclear torpedo, but was persuaded not to by another officer. For a moment, one man's decision could have started World War III. Back-channel talks continued, and finally a deal was struck. The Soviets would remove the missiles, the US would promise not to invade Cuba, and the US would secretly remove missiles from Turkey. But what if that submarine commander had chosen differently? We will now step into that abyss to understand what we so narrowly avoided. The answer would change the world forever. In our alternate reality, the story of Black Saturday ends differently. On the Soviet submarine B-59, deep underwater, surrounded by American warships on the surface, the captain believes war has already begun. Depth charges pound the hull, a direct attack. Communication with Moscow is impossible. Under immense pressure, he gives the order. A nuclear torpedo streaks through the water. It detonates against the hull of the USS Randolph, an American aircraft carrier. The explosion is blinding. A mushroom cloud born from the sea rises into the Caribbean sky. The quarantine line is instantly vaporized. In the White House Situation Room, the news arrives like a punch to the gut. An American aircraft carrier and its thousands of crew are gone. The Soviets have used a nuclear weapon. For President Kennedy and his advisors, debate is over. The decision is made with a heavy heart and a trembling hand. The order is given. Bombers are scrambled. Missile silos open. The first wave targets missile sites in Cuba and military targets in the Soviet Union. B-52s on high alert for days fly toward their destinations. From Midwest silos, ICBMs roar to life. They climb into the sky, fiery pillars carrying unimaginable destruction. In the Soviet Union, early warning systems scream to life. The Soviet response is automatic and massive. On city streets, panicked whispers and crackling radio spread the news. An American ship has been destroyed. An attack is underway. Air raid sirens, once drills, now wail with genuine terror. People look to the sky, hearts pounding. They don't know the details, but they know the unthinkable is happening. The world has fallen over the edge. The first American missiles strike their targets in Western Russia and Eastern Europe. Military bases, airfields, command centers are erased in colossal fireballs. But this is only the beginning. The Soviet leadership, likely operating from a secure bunker deep underground, unleashes its full arsenal. This is the second wave, aimed not just at military targets, but at the heart of the enemy, its cities. Hidden silos across Siberia, submarines in the Atlantic, hundreds of missiles arc across the globe, their trajectories a web of doom spun over the planet. In Washington, D.C., the sky flashes brighter than 1,000 suns. The Capitol building, the White House, the monuments that defined a nation are turned to dust in less than a second. A shockwave, moving faster than the speed of sound, flattens everything for miles. In New York, a similar fate unfolds. The Statue of Liberty melts. Skyscrapers built of steel and concrete are thrown to the ground like a child's toys. Millions of lives are extinguished in a single, silent moment, before the sound of the blast can even reach them. The same horror is repeated in Chicago, Los Angeles, London, Paris, Bonn. The destruction is not one-sided. Moscow is hit with equal fury. The Kremlin, Red Square, vanish in a cloud of radioactive fire. Leningrad, Kiev, Vladivostok suffer the same fate. The world's great cultural and population centers become ground zero for a planetary inferno. The exchange of fire is fast, brutal, and total. Within the first hour, the primary phase of the nuclear war is over. But the dying has only just begun. The explosions have thrown millions of tons of dust, smoke, and soot high into the atmosphere. As the fires rage in the ruins of 100 cities, a new and more insidious threat begins to gather. The sun, visible just an hour before, starts to dim. Massive clouds of debris and vaporized earth are spreading, carried by the high-altitude winds. They form a thick, dark shroud that begins to block out the sunlight. Survivors look up to see a sky growing darker, not with clouds of rain, but with the ashes of their world. The hours, they turn into days and the sky just keeps getting darker. The sun, it's now this pale, ghostly disk, barely visible through thick black clouds of soot that have wrapped around the entire globe. This is the beginning of the nuclear winter. Scientists had theorized about something like this, but the reality is far more terrifying than any model. Temperatures all across the planet start to plummet. In the middle of what should be a mild autumn, snow begins to fall. It's greasy, black slush, tainted with radioactive particles. Black snow covers everything, poisoning land and water. With the sun blocked out, photosynthesis grinds to a halt. Plants wither and die. Crops ready for harvest freeze and rot. In the oceans, plankton die off in the cold and dark. The effect cascades upwards. Fish die, seabirds starve. On land, farm animals perish from cold and lack of food. The web of life is torn apart in weeks. The countryside falls silent, broken by the whisper of the toxic wind. For human survivors, this new world is a frozen nightmare. Those far from the blasts now face starvation and radiation. The electricity grids are gone. There's no running water, no communication, no government. Canned goods in fallout shelters won't last forever. Radiation sickness takes its toll. People suffer nausea, hair loss, internal bleeding. There are no doctors, no hospitals, no medicine. Fear and desperation turn neighbors against each other. Small survivor groups fight over dwindling resources. The world is divided into zones. Hot zones, uninhabitable craters. Grey zones, fallout-covered lands. Cold zones, remote southern hemisphere regions. Australia, New Zealand, southern Africa spared the fire, but they can't escape the cold. As black clouds spread south, skies darken and temperatures fall. Their fate is delayed, not avoided. The war of missiles is over, but the war for survival against a dying planet has just begun. So, a decade has passed since the war. The year is 1972, but honestly, the calendar doesn't mean much now. The nuclear winter has reached its peak and has finally started to recede, but the world is, well, it's permanently changed. The soot has slowly settled out of the atmosphere, but the sky isn't the same brilliant blue as before. Now it's this hazy, sickly yellow. The sun's warmth has partially returned, but the planet is, on average, several degrees colder. The ice caps have advanced, and the weather patterns are violent and unpredictable. Massive, sterile dust storms sweep across the continents, still carrying dangerous radioactive particles. Humanity has been reduced to a tiny fraction of its former numbers. Most survivors live in small, isolated communities in the southern hemisphere or tucked into remote pockets of the north. They live a pre-industrial existence. Knowledge of the old world is fading into legend. Old people tell stories of cities that touched the sky. They tell of metal birds that flew across oceans. They tell of a magic box that showed moving pictures and brought voices from far away. For the children born after the fall, these are myths, impossible fairy tales. Technology has regressed by centuries. Great libraries and universities are radioactive ruins. Some knowledge survives in books saved from the fires, but the tools and infrastructure to use that knowledge are gone. A few communities might have a working generator, powered by salvaged fuel, but when the fuel runs out, it becomes a useless relic. The most valuable skills now aren't coding or finance, but farming with hand tools, purifying water, and knowing which plants are safe to eat. The world has become small again. The silence is the most profound change. The constant hum of the industrial world, the noise of cars, planes, and factories, that's all gone. The air is empty of radio waves and television signals. At night, the sky is a breathtaking spectacle. With no light pollution, the stars and the Milky Way blaze with a brilliance that few in the 20th century had seen. It's a beautiful, terrifying sight. The universe is vast and indifferent, a silent witness to lonely, struggling survivors. Is there any hope for them to rebuild? 50 years after the fall, in the early 2010s of the old calendar, a new kind of society is, emerging from the ashes. The generation that remembers the world before the war is gone. Their stories have passed into legend, distorted and embellished with each retelling. The new generations are, honestly, hardier, born into this broken world. They are accustomed to the harsh climate, the scarce resources, and the constant background radiation that, shortens their lifespans. Humanity has survived, but it has been forever scarred, both genetically and culturally. New social structures have formed, often based on tribal or feudal models. In some areas, warlords control scarce resources with iron-fisted brutality. In other places, more cooperative communities have formed, rediscovering old techniques of agriculture and governance. They trade with other settlements using barter systems, bullets, preserved seeds, or salvaged tools. These small sparks of civilization are, fragile, constantly threatened by raiders, disease, and the unpredictable, violent weather of the wounded planet. The old cities are forbidden places, known as the Poisoned Lands or the Glowlands, whispered about as places of ancient demons and lingering death. Yet they also hold the treasures of the lost world. Groups of scavengers, known as stalkers or diggers, make dangerous expeditions into the ruins. They wear crude protective gear made from leather and scavenged plastics, searching for salvageable technology, preserved books, or anything else that might give their community an edge. Many never return. The human form itself is changing. The constant low-level radiation has accelerated mutation rates. While many of these changes result in birth defects and cancers, some individuals are born with a higher tolerance for radiation or other adaptations to the harsh new environment. These changes create new social divisions and superstitions. Some mutants are cast out, feared as omens of bad luck. In other communities, they are seen as the next step in human evolution, a sign that humanity is adapting to its self-inflicted wound. The definition of what it means to be human is being rewritten in the dust. A century has passed. The year would have been 2062. The planet is slowly healing. The nuclear winter has given way to a strange, unpredictable climate, but life is returning. As we step back from this dark mirror of history, we return to our own world, to October 2025. We are living in the world that was saved. The story of what could have happened is not just a frightening fantasy, it is a powerful reminder of how close we came to the end. The real heroes were leaders, diplomats, advisors, Vasily Arkhipov, who chose restraint over escalation. They steered the ship of humanity away from the waterfall, and we are all living in their debt. The world they saved is not perfect. We still face immense challenges: climate change, political division, the continued existence of nuclear weapons. But we have a world to face them in. We have cities that touch the sky, not cities of radioactive glass. We have global communication, not global silence. We have the collected knowledge of our ancestors, not just scattered, half-forgotten fragments. We have the chance to learn from our past, both the history that happened and the history that was thankfully avoided. The crisis showed that in a nuclear age, victory and defeat are meaningless when everything is destroyed. The ultimate victory was found in compromise, in empathy, in the difficult and courageous act of stepping back from the brink. It was a victory for all of humanity. This journey is an invitation to appreciate the fragility of our peace and the importance of diplomacy. It asks us to consider our own role in ensuring that such a brink is never approached again. As you look at the world around you today, think about that other path, the one of fire and dust. What are your thoughts on this shadow history? How do you think the world would have changed? You've been watching IfVerse, where imagination becomes reality. If you enjoyed this What If, tap like, hit subscribe, and join us next week for another mind-bending possibility.